1975, and at that point she had begun a teacher education program at University of California. She graduated in 1975 and also received her master's in English at that time. She has been teaching here at Eastern for 26 years in the Department of English and Writing, and has also served as the Writing Center director during that time. Her research focus has always been helping students succeed who may come from backgrounds that might provide challenges to their success, such as first generation college students, which she is one, and students from low socioeconomic status backgrounds, which she is one, and students who may face other kinds of challenges, particularly cultural challenges, trying to navigate an American college academic culture. Some of her research includes working with ESL students, Native American rhetoric, and working with college students with Asperger's syndrome, which we now refer to as on the autism spectrum. Her most recent research has been on Pacific Islander college students, particularly students from Micronesia. And this presentation is informed by her 2016-17 sabbatical, where she taught at Xavier High School in Chuuk in the Federated States of Micronesia. And with that, I will let her take it away.
Thank you. So I will begin with greetings. I'm going to just stare at my computer. Rananim Ali Kasalelie Mogathin Iakwe Yokwe Afa Ade Tiruwumi Lenwo, and for the American Samoa students who might show up, Talofa as well. By the way, these spellings are selected by my students here because there are multiple spellings of Micronesian Island greetings, because when they moved from oral to written culture, many different institutions chose different spellings. So it took a while for my students to agree to land on the spelling that they wanted. So I'm going to start. This is a non-published web page as yet, on purpose, because I have not had enough Islander eyes on this website to make me feel comfortable sharing it, because I am only a white ally. I am an outsider. I do not have an insider voice. And while my research may be informed by working for 26 years with Micronesian students, and it may be informed by my research and my time teaching in Chuuk, I can never fully have confidence that I'm not making mistakes. And I want my Islander students to vet a lot of these pages for me before I publish. So in the spirit of being a white ally, I am going to take 5 minutes to begin my presentation with, in fact, the voice of Yolanda Jacob, who is a very famous Micronesian, who very famously thought it really important to start with a Micronesian voice, a powerful one, and there's so many more like her. And throughout my website, I chose to do a website for a very particular reason. I didn't want to do a book that students need to purchase. I wanted it to be able to change it as time goes. I want student voices in here helping me edit pages, putting their names in here with me. I want it to be something that they can circle around in like an island, not linear. So it's important that we start there. So, actually I'm already at the prologue page here. So to begin, I want to talk a little bit about what led me to this project. As I said, it's very challenging and humbling to write as an outsider, but I want you to know that I have integrated as much as I can so many Micronesian voices. One of my main mentors, Jojo Peter, who is from Chuuk, was the director of the College of Micronesia in Chuuk. I read everything he's written. He just finished his dissertation. There are so many Micronesian voices getting their doctorates right now, even this year, in great numbers as we speak. And I'm going to try to get as many of those voices into this website as I can to inspire you. He was one of my mentors. I'll talk a little bit more about him later. I read, for example, Margarita Cholome has written her dissertation on wayfinding, envisioning a culturally responsive educational system for Chuuk State. Or Vid Radiator, who just completed his dissertation on successful practices of Micronesian college students in Hawaii, utilizing positive deviance to develop strength-based student support services in higher education. So I've integrated as many Micronesian voices. I interviewed 30 Micronesian students here at EOU. I work with the Micronesian students in Chuuk. But why this website? What is this website for? I want you to know that the key words for this website are self-knowledge and self-advocacy. So many things are written about Micronesians. Academics writing for academics. Everything I've read, the audience has never been students, right? So what I've done is taken a model that I'm going to share with you, and I have turned it into a tool that students can actively use themselves, right? For their own self-knowledge, so they can start to advocate for themselves. That's the key to this whole system here. I missed handing? Everybody have a handout so far? Okay. So this is a vast website. I will, if there's a famous iceberg model of culture, so instead I turned it into an island in Chuuk instead of an iceberg. The top of the highest mountain I climbed with the lighthouse, we'll probably only get to that dot here today. The website is so vast and goes so deep, all right? So I'm just going to go until I stop. My hope is that eventually my name will disappear from this website, taken over by someone with a doctorate in Micronesia, from Micronesia, who wants to turn this website into an insider voice. I want my students to take it over. I want them to be editors with me. So that's my prologue. So let's go back here. Let's get rid of the ukulele. Let's head on back to the home page here, where I want to just share with you that this photo And the use of the word navigation in my title, Micronesian Student's Guide to Navigating American Colleges, came from my growing understanding just living in Chuk with my students, what navigators really means and what it means to them. You know, for years I heard, oh yeah, Navigators Club, but it has a deep cultural meaning. There's a link to a website on Master Navigators in my website, very well worth watching. But Joachim Peter puts it best: islanders still travel for the sake of sustaining their lives, except in the post-colonial days of compact of free association, certain contexts have changed and new horizons of travel present different sets of challenges. All right, so we'll start here with an introduction. I have many ways to get to everything, so I'll just do it. This is just made with Google Sites, like I say, unpublished as yet. So I want to first introduce some people who got me to Chuk. Thanks to Jocelyn Panuel, one of our students here. I just mentioned I really want to go to Chuk to teach. She knew the principal at SHS, Xavier High School, contacted him. He even knew I was coming before I was coming. All right, this is his family. This is me, my second day in Chuk. And I want to talk to you just briefly about where I was, because I want to get to the model here. First of all, it's very important that I realize that I'm talking to a lot of people who, when they hear Micronesia, they don't really know what it means. And for those of you who are Pacific Islanders, most people don't understand what a commonwealth is, what a territory is, what compact of free association is. So the Micronesian definition is really, the importance of the way I'm using it is from Hilda Heine, who is the president of Marshall Islands. I'm using it as a geographical term, different from the Federated States of Micronesia, which is one small part of many Micronesian island nations, all right? So for the sake of this guide, Micronesia includes the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, which includes Saipan. Anybody here from Saipan? It includes the Federated States of Micronesia. Raise your hand if you're from Micronesia, from FSN, raise your hand high. Yeah, lots of people here from there. That includes the island states of Pohnpei, Chuk, Yap, and Koshrai. Republic of Marshall Islands, anybody here? All righty. Republic of Palau. All right, more here. And from the territory of Guam. That is geographical Micronesia. That is not to say that this would be a really helpful guide for students, Pacific Islanders from other island nations such as American Samoa, but it's very important to understand what I mean by that. And just a quick view. This is, oops, no, maybe it's not going to let me do it. I'm not going to mess around with it at the moment. So I went there on sabbatical with the goal of learning more about my students here, really. And they were my teachers. I learned more from them than I taught them. But when I speak of students from Micronesia, I'm talking about 1 million square miles of the Pacific Ocean. And the ocean is part of Micronesia. A lot of people think of it as little islands separated from one another. The ocean is part of Micronesia, and it is not a quick ferry boat ride between these islands. We're talking thousands of, it would have taken me $1,000 just to get to Palau. One of my fellow volunteers took a ship for 2 days just to get to the Mortlocks, the outer islands of Chuuk State itself, right? So it's a lot of people don't understand the vastness that we're talking about when we talk about Micronesia. I also want to say that Micronesians have multiple identities. They can be from many islands, right? Not just one. Or they can have an American father and a Micronesian, a Chuukese mother, right? As the famous Kitani Graham did, the famous wrestler from Chuuk. So it's important to keep in mind that there are multiple identities that work here as well. And there's a handout right there, Beanie, you can grab, okay. So I want to honor, before I go on, some of my key mentors, and one of them just walked in. Beanie Moses from the Multicultural Center has been my mentor since she was a young undergraduate working in the Writing Center when I was a professor. And now she knows so much more than I do about working here at the university. And she has guided me a great deal. Moving around on this is a little bit challenging, I'm finding. It's the only challenge. Oh, see, it does super highway stuff on me here. I'm trying to just get to one other face. I have put a whole bunch of photos. These are my students, my Teutonics and my Juggernauts, my juniors and seniors whom I taught, whom I thought you might like to see. I am dressed how I would have been dressed last year. In my classroom, I lived in Chuukese skirts, t-shirts. I never wore a sweater. I never wore an undershirt. And the only time I ever wore a raincoat is when I was running between buildings if there were monsoons, right? And I was always without shoes in buildings, all right? So I also want you to know that Fran Hiesel, who lived for about 60 years in Chuuk, who has written so many books about it, was also a mentor, and I was so lucky that the librarian at the Mike Sem Library at Chuuk, when he was visiting, arranged for me to fangirl him. I was just so embarrassingly like to sign my books. So he's been very much a part. He started my research the year before I even went to Chuuk. I read his books cover to cover, and he introduced me to so many other Micronesian scholar voices that work right now in the field. Just so that you can just get a quick view, this is a chapel at Chuuk, Xavier High School, so you can see the beauty of where I was. This is, in fact, the director he's a priest, he's a father, right? I've been asked to turn off lights, but can I if we're taping, so they can see the pictures? Yeah, I can. Oh, that would be so cool. All right. Better? So you can see that the Jesuits are a very particular kind of humble people who dig in and do the work, and they run that school. But at the same time, it's a very practical school, and this was the sign on his door I found one day. Hunting season is open. $3 for your first cat, $5 for your second, $2 per rat. I was not in Kansas anymore. This is my view grading from the porch, so you can see the beauty. These are some of my fellow Jesuit volunteers. Notice that I'm dressed this way now. I was also dressed this way when I went swimming. Modesty is the watchword in Chuuk. So volunteers made Christmas trees anyway, climbed coconut. So I'm just showing you to give you an idea, an island picnic with some of my colleagues. These are actually fathers in training, the first three on the left, who were the most fun I've ever had with, and the vice principal on the right. So I got to go and meet many people from the Philippines, work in the accounting office. This was a super volunteer who came back many years later after volunteering as a doctor, interning, and she sort of saved my life, having brought some antibiotics I needed because I got very, very sick. There are Japanese volunteers there, my Eriko, Ricky Tu Watercott, the dorm advisor who made the Christmas tree, who gave me my first fresh coconut water, cold from the freezer, hikes up to the Japanese lighthouse. It is a famous scuba diving capital of the world, Chuuk, because it is where the Americans bombed the equivalent of their Pearl Harbor, and they're all at the bottom of Chuuk Lagoon. So it's a diving capital of the world. So this is a view from the lighthouse. These two people were my lifelines and helped me when I had hard days. This is where I lived here, bottom right-hand corner. That's my spot. No Wi-Fi, my small room. I did get Wi-Fi in my office occasionally, right? Bertha, I even named my fan because she was my best friend. I created a reading library thanks to EOU. I mailed boxes and boxes of books, and more were sent after. This is the before picture right across from my office. These are the boxes of books, Kihoni helping me make it. The after picture, right? I had a skit I created to advertise the art poster for the library. And these young men happily wore Chuuki's dresses for my skit. Their sense of humor is so great. Poster winners to get students to come. It was a reading library as opposed to a library where you check things out. You take a book, you put it back. The only problem is getting the books back. They get out there, and then they're way out there, and they circulate, but I don't care. I just keep sending boxes of books, and that means more and more books are out, right? This is a typical day when it rained. You walk through lakes to get in between classrooms. The buses broke down all the time for those poor girls who lived with sponsor families in Chuuki's homes who would get up at 5:30 in the morning to get on the bus to get to school, to be there on time for the 8 o'clock bell, right? All the guys lived in the dorm. This is a typical trail that I would walk to the village. This is Tatiana, and fish, 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 fish. This is the road from the high school to town, 7 miles of that. I got to know Inta, the buyer, very well. We were very good friends. Her mother made my skirt. I would drive there in garbage trucks sometimes. This is Inta, one of my dearest friends from Chuuk. She's actually from Pfeffin Island. And this is, tourists come to this roof on the main building at Xavier just to see the view. And this is one of the sunsets from Chuuk, one of the many. And these are 3 of our graduates from the senior class when I was there, who are now students here at EOU. Jasmine, Val, and Nat. Okay, and you've seen them around. And this is the reason why I'm doing the website at all. Our navigators, this is from their Island Magic show. Okay, to go back, I'm going to jump right into this section of my website because I want you to understand what this is, where it comes from, and how this particular website, I'm inviting students to take a very famous model a lot of colleges are using. It's Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological human development model. It's the theory that drives the website. It's interestingly shaped like an island. Other scholars have taken it and adapted it. One of the adaptations is on the handout that I've provided you, if you want to look at it more closely. I'm just going to talk about it here a little bit so that you can understand where I'm headed here. Like I say, one of the outer layers isn't on this model. It's called the chronosystem. So, you are an island ecosystem. I want you to think of yourselves that way. There are so many forces at work in your lives that you may not be aware of. And I think that you will succeed more if you can see your own lives through the lens of Yuri Bronfenbrenner's island ecosystem model. And I really think it will help you to succeed, right? So this website is for you to look at your own lives through so you can be more of an advocate for yourself, all right? Because a lot of people you're working with here at EOU don't fully understand Micronesia and Pacific Islanders, and you need to learn to be your own best ambassadors for your islands and what you need. Does that make sense? So, weird terms, I know. The chronosystem, what is happening in the world today? What forces are at work in your lives, right? That may be bringing you good things, but they may be giving you challenges and obstacles. I have a whole section on that, right? I'm just going to give you an overview, and then we'll just start going through them a little bit so you'll get a feel for it. The macro system, that is deep cultural values and beliefs that have been that your lives have been informed by the aunties and uncles and fathers and mothers and extended families around you teaching you are important. Those deeply affect your success here in the best of ways, but ironically can sometimes become obstacles. And I'll try to talk about that with you a little bit. The exosystem, those are the entities that are institutional policies that you have nothing to do with. You can't form them like immigration policies, financial aid policies, where entities outside of you, exo, right, are making all sorts of decisions about you and your lives. And you need to know what those are and what decisions they're making, because they're affecting your success in the classroom. So I have a whole section on the exosystem, and it's defined on your handout as well. The mesosystem is simply a term he uses for the interplay of the microsystems you operate in. That's where you are present. There are so many microsystems in which you operate on your campus, in the classroom, in INLO, in all of those offices, right? In your professors' offices. So Bronfenbrenner, I'm using the Kim and Diaz model for immigrant students. This is their version of the Bronfenbrenner model applied to immigrant students. All of this affects all that goes on in these places and can affect your success, right? But if you're understanding them and seeing these things at work, you can start advocating for yourself. And then down here to the individual student and your temperament and the choices you make as an individual student, all right? So it's a wonderful sort of, and it's shaped like an island. And if anybody understands ecosystems sitting in this room, it's my Islander students, because they are facing and study in their science classes, even at Xavier, what's going on in their island ecosystems. They are the climate change warriors of the world right now, and their voices are strong. They even sued Czechoslovakia, right, for what Czechoslovakia's factories are doing to their islands. I don't think it went very well, but at least that David, tried to battle that Goliath. All right? So that's Bronfenfenner's model. That is the theory behind everything that is in this particular website that you can swim around in. You don't have to move around it in a linear way. If I can do anything, I'll try to find someone who can help me turn all of these table and contents from linear to circles, and I'd be a happier person. All right. So you are an island ecosystem. The more you understand that, the more you're going to be able to advocate for yourself. Look at all of the things at work in your student lives because you are Pacific Islanders, and particularly Micronesia, COFA. Most people sitting in here don't understand what that is. The Compact of Free Association that affects your ability to be here, for example, to work with a green card, without a green card, rather. All of these island nations have very complex relationships to the United States. Students need to understand what's going on with COFA right now. It started back in 1947 when you were territories. Then in the 1960s, as your island nations started to gain autonomy, these compacts of free association were negotiated with the United States. And, whoops. And right now, they are all being renegotiated with the end date at 2023, right? So your government officials, for example, as an example of this chrono system, are going to be making tremendous decisions about what negotiations are going to happen among you and for you, right? And so it's very important for you and for those of us who are trying to help our students to understand what it means to be a COFA nation. So people will say, where's your green card? They don't understand COFA. They will say to you, where are your income taxes? You have to have an income tax form. You go, well, we don't have income tax forms where we are, right? They're going to ask you for evidence of how you're supporting your family. Your father's supporting your family so he can't give you money. But they're at home supporting on the land. They're at home supporting with food from the garden. How do you document that? So a lot of people will be asking you things, and you have to realize they don't know that they can't ask for those things. And they're not meaning to be ignorant, but most Americans don't know, for example, what your chrono system looks like, what's going on with your nations in terms of this Compact of Free Association. The U.S. wants to keep these compacts going because 1/3 of the shipping trade goes through those seas, strategically. Kwajalein Island has our missiles for defense, right? But there's an anti-immigrant attitude going on now, right? That's affecting, so you need to keep informed because these things are those chrono system. That's just one piece of it. There are outside interests like China and Taiwan trying to come in and grab at your land and put a resort on Yap. They're sending soft money because they want that strategic stuff, right? So this is simply a list of the ones that I know working with my students There's an island migration going on that most people in the world don't know about, though it's starting to hit the news because of climate change. 70,000 people alone are going to be displaced just from the Marshall Islands. Some scientists saying by 2050, right? Australia is just starting to have discussions. Is climate change going to be another way for someone to become an immigrant, like someone escaping from war? Right? That's an interesting discussion, right? Because there are going to be climate change refugees, thousands of them, because a lot of those islands are at sea level and some are already gone. Ask Kiribati, one of those islands, where they're having to displace entire populations of people. You need to know about that and be thinking about that. But more important, in your majors, can you connect your studies to these issues? Whether you're in business or in sociology or in English, find ways to use my website to find topics for your studies so that your studies are feeding back into your own efforts to work with your island home and island heritage. Anti-immigrant attitudes today. I don't need to tell you about them. They're in the news every day. I have a long section on that. The anti-immigrant attitudes are not just from Americans here who have an anti-immigrant attitude towards a lot of other cultural populations, but even among islanders themselves. Hawaii has a tremendous prejudice against Micronesians. Most people don't know that. I was there 24 hours, and every time I said I was going to Chuuk, every Hawaiian had nothing but horrible things to say, right? But there's a very special Japanese association there who's done a beautiful documentary in here on how shameful that is for them to think that way, because they realize they're being scapegoated, right, for other problems, okay? So there are anti-immigrant attitudes today, mostly in the shape as from my interviews with students. It's microaggressions that students suffer more than hate crimes here in this valley. And my interviews revealed that, in fact, students have suffered from microaggressions, right? What is a microaggression? You need to know what that is. So I won't go into those more. That section is the chrono system, meant to help you understand the things that work in your lives that have to do with what's going on in the world today. Another area that it's important for you to understand is that your deep cultural values and beliefs are affecting are providing you tremendous ability to succeed here on campus, right? This list will not be unfamiliar to you. Grounded in articles and research, these values of respect, family, collaboration, and group sharing, silence, humility, the different ideas of time and of land, the concepts of death and funerals, gender roles and expectations, help-seeking challenges. Let me just give you an example here. There, believe it or not, have been a lot of articles written about how Pacific Islanders struggle seeking the help they need. And I want to focus on that one as an example in the macro system, because I see it every day with my students, right? Struggling with help-seeking challenges. There's been a lot of literature about that that's been very interesting to read, and that their attitudes towards silence and humility and respect make it very hard to seek help, because They've been raised to think that seeking help is a sign of weakness, that sharing outside of your clan what's wrong is dishonoring your clan, right? So that the wonderful things that make you what you are can sometimes become obstacles. Help-seeking challenges is just one example of the kinds of things that can become not just wonderful things that help you, but end up being obstacles. So part of my website includes, so I have to keep just managing, going back and forth, because like I say, this is already hundreds of pages long. As I move through what is affecting you deeply on the outside, what values and beliefs that you bring, what systems of policies are affecting you, what's going on in the systems on campus, the microsystem that affect you, and the issues of the individual student. Mary Ann Weaver is already working with me on this section. I'm starting to create practical guides that will be part of this. My first one I created when I started getting I got 50 emails from my seniors in Chuk saying, can you write me a recommendation letter? Right? They didn't know how to ask for a recommendation letter. They didn't know what I needed. So I created a guide that helped them explain that they needed to learn to brag, even though bragging was something they were taught never to do. Right? So I created a guide that I sent to students explaining why asking for a letter of recommendation might be culturally difficult, and giving the professors they were asking for what they needed might be particularly hard because of cultural reasons, right? For example, just an example of using research in these guides. From the time they are toddlers, children are told that the tallest tree is in danger of being struck by lightning. The crab that struggles farthest up the side of the pot to free itself from the hot water will be pulled down by all the rest. For an individual to stand out from the rest is a challenge to the society first order of values that is expected to be shared by community. So I was able to, in that guide, help my students say, this is going to be hard for you asking for that recommendation letter. Telling your professor all the great stuff you've done. Doing a brag sheet is culturally difficult for you. I understand. I couch it in research, and I give them tips for how to ask. So then I got back 50 requests for recommendation letters that included all the information I need so that I could write all these individual letters that were really good about each of the students, right? But they had to talk with their teachers about how difficult that was for them to do, and talk about the cultural obstacles of asking for brag sheets. Again, this is a research-based website. Everything is using Uri Brofenfenner's theory to help you look at your own lives, but there's a practical piece. So what if I am struggling in or failing a course or need help in other areas? So from the help-seeking research that I did, I have created a practical guide. Again, I want student eyes on this with me. What do you need to do if help-seeking is difficult for you? And so this website is going to be a combination of research into all the things that are happening in time now that are affecting you, all the values and beliefs, all the policies in the exosystem being made about you, the interplay between all those systems you operate in on campus, classrooms, professors' offices, financial aid offices, advisors' offices. All of this is going to come down to a self-understanding for self-advocacy. Given all that, what can you do about it? What are the practical things? So I will be writing, this is a half-done website, right? I still have a long way to go, and I've been working on it for 3 years. My research started the year before I left. And so other guides that, I keep losing the guide page. What if I'm afraid to share my writing drafts with others? Or how do I more effectively participate in class discussions, given that silence and its value in my culture is so honored, right? Not oversharing, keeping things to yourself, showing you are independent and not weak and seeking help, right? So it goes from great, deep theoretical research down to these practical guides, all right? There's so much more I'd like to share with you. Let me go back to the larger table of contents again. Like I say, I'm thinking of the book Horton Hears a Who, where there's a speck of dust on a flower that's a universe. That's what this website, trying to share it with you in 50 minutes, feels like to me. I am trying to share a universe in about 50 minutes. So all these pieces are there, explained, and I also, in addition, for it to be a tool for self-knowledge and self-advocacy for you, so that you can look through this lens at your own lives and all the social forces that work in your lives. I would like it to end up being a tool for research for you, as I will keep adding to all of the, so much, believe it or not, is being written about you. That's why I wrote the website to you and for you, okay? But if you are going to be looking for things to write about in your classes where you can turn your capstones into something connected to Pacific Islander issues, or papers in a science class or in an economics class, I want you to be able to go to that reference page and maybe find a window in, right? So that it becomes a place where you become a researcher and you can enjoy, you can be like Jojo Kim, who started off as my mentor, just having gotten his doctorate, but he started off as a student at Xavier High School. And I didn't know that before I went there. I found an article that he had written that deeply moved me and talked about students as navigators today, who now travel far distances to send their energy, their money home, right? Or all of their learnedness home, right? And he talks about the tradition of navigation, but I didn't know that he was an Xavier High School graduate until I got there. I was doing a workshop for teachers. I used it as an example of trying to help students learn how to read. I'm teaching teachers how to help them learn how to read difficult texts. And Principal Carl informs me that Jojo Peter had been a student there, had had an accident as a freshman that left him in a wheelchair for life. Instead of staying away and giving up, he came back to Xavier, where there are no walkways, there are rolling hills, no asphalt, right? No elevators. And for 4 years, his friends carried him around that campus to his classes, to the awful bathhouse where they have to bathe, to the dorms, to the commons area to eat. And he graduated with honors, went on to get his master's, became director of the College of Micronesia in Chuuk, then went to University of Manoa and got his doctorate. And I want him to be somebody you know about. And these are the kinds of people who are peopling my website. And all those interviews that you gave me, your voices without your name connected to them are quoted in many sections. On these sections in respect, on silence, on collaboration. All right, so your voices are in this website as well. Thanks to your generous time with me when I interviewed lots of you for, I said an hour and then we went on even longer. So again, you need to realize that you're in an academic culture is its own weird culture. American academic culture is its own weird culture. And the more you learn about what's affecting your lives, you can become an advocate in those offices when you're working with people. They may say and do things that are culturally offensive to you, but they don't know they're doing it. I'm sure I've done so, right? They don't mean to seem like they maybe distrust you, or you're not looking them in the eye because you've been taught not to look authority in the eye, and they see that as avoidance and maybe you're lying. They misread your respect, right? These are coming from stories, you know, students tell me their stories. So I look forward for this website to becoming ours rather than mine. I would love for students to say, I really like that page on. I'm working on that in my anthro class. Can we bring some of my resources and writing to it so that I can be a co-author of that page? I would love that, right? I need help with the economics page. I wish Norvin Faltier were here, one of our graduates, still from YAP. Scott McConnell visited his island and looked at the stone money there. So that's my invitation to you, is to help me make this a website better for you. So we have 2 minutes for questions. Okay, that's it.
If anyone has any questions, I'll bring the microphone around.
And this is a Chuukese dress. I lived in this too.
Thank you, Susan. That was beautiful, and I have tons of questions, but I'm only going to ask for one clarification. You said something about the boys living in dorms, but the girls living with families.
Right.
Could you
Yes.
explain that?
Families would not ever want their young women to be living in dorms. It wouldn't feel right to them. They should be in families. That's just a cultural belief, right? Does any student want to explain it better than that for me? MJ was from Chuuk, so she wasn't placed with a family. Was anybody here placed with a family in Chuuk who was sent to Xavier? Yeah, a lot of those students aren't here right now. It's a matter of just fear for their daughters and protection. And the Chuukese families opened their homes up. They become sponsor families. But it meant they had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to get on that bus that always broke down in the potholes on the way. They're trying to get a new bus. They're doing a big fundraiser.
It's International Women's Day. I had to ask that question.
Right.
Can you also explain the cat thing?
There are no veterinarians on the island. There's no Spain, right? So there is a proliferation of cats and rats that are a serious issue. Nothing to be done, no animal shelters, right? And so it's just a matter of practicality. And I saw that sign and just went, wow, because, I might live little kitties at home. But, I met rats in the bathroom. Hello, good morning, how are you? There was one, not in my living quarters, but in the main building, right? It's just, and when I first saw my first Chukie's rat, Father Dennis heard me go, ooh, and he goes, oh, it's just a Chukie's squirrel. And when I started thinking of them as Chukie's squirrels, I was okay with that. President Insko knows he's lived on the island of Chuk, right? Wasn't it in Chuk where you were? Yes. So he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. The heat was the hardest for me. I melted. I changed my shirt 3 times a day, some days, because it was so humid, such humid heat. Any other questions? Over here. Elizabeth?
So when we came here to EOU, it's obvious that we went through our own challenges. So when you went to Chuk, did you get sort of an understanding of how we felt when we came?
Well, that's what I came to deeply understand, and why this website has such deep personal meaning for me. I understand better now the sacrifices that Micronesian students and families are taking on when a student says, I'm going to go to college on the continent. When they pack their bags and get on that plane, they don't know when they're going to see their families again. It is so expensive. They don't go home on weekends to do their laundry, or for Thanksgiving, or for Christmas. Some of them have to miss funerals, the most important ceremony to a Micronesian that exists, that go on for 1 or 2 weeks. They have to mourn the loss of someone here, and it's very painful for them. So I really grew to understand what it meant. Some students come here and end up living here as, permanently, because they can make so much more money here, even just working at Wildflower, than they can ever make on their home islands, and help their families financially, right? But I don't want them to get stuck in those jobs. And I want my website to help them not get stuck in those jobs. I want them to be the students who go on and get their masters and their doctorates and become CEOs of timber companies and presidents of colleges. And so this website, I want them to be college graduates, because that's, research shows that if you're a college graduate, you're going to make $1 million more in your lifetime. That's just the economics of a BA, right? So yes, the sacrifice is great. I could see my kids, over on the west side easily, anytime I wanted to. It's a very different experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Susan, for sharing such a wonderful experience with us. And I look forward to seeing more of your research.
I've almost hit delete 1,000 times, because I feel like the white ally who has no right to even write this guide. That's the painful part for me. So I'm trying not to do that. And the more I talk to students and the more I get their feedback on this, the more confident I'm going to be that this is a culturally sensitive website that doesn't co-opt their voices, but empowers their own. So that will be my challenge. So thanks you all for coming. More brownies and coffee. Thank you. Kiriso.